Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at Beyond Mystic, and welcome to this episode entitled Astrology Fix with Sonja Francis. Of course, you can find the beautiful Sonja at AstrologerCoach.com. Let's give her a big, warm welcome today. Sonja, how are you doing?
Great. How are you, Jean-Claude?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to see you. We haven't had an
Yeah.
opportunity to chat in a couple of months, so this is very exciting to me.
I know it has been a while, yeah, and so much has happened, right, in that time.
Really? I haven't noticed. Is there
I feel
anything
like
weird happening in the
the
news?
energetically speaking, the energies are just kind of like pushing and like things are going in all these different directions, and there's a lot of internal stress from that, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Well, why don't we get into that, Sonja?
yeah,
Let's see here how we're going to structure this. I did inform the audience here that we were going to have a special on the full moon, the blue moon tomorrow. I think that's pretty
yes,
interesting for a lot of the people. Maybe we can start with maybe an update as from the last interview to today. As you're saying here, what's changed energetically? Maybe we can spend 5 minutes there. Then we'll talk about the full moon, and then if we have time get into the planets shifting maybe for 2021. We can, of course, talk
yep,
about the election coming up next week and maybe take a few questions from the audience, and we'll try to keep this under an hour for you. Does that sound good?
perfect. Sounds
All right.
great.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here on YouTube. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, this is an interactive show, so please put up your comments and questions, and we will deal with them as we go along during this interview. So, Sonja, why don't we start there? Maybe map
Yes.
out the last couple of months and explain to the audience here what's been happening energetically speaking.
So obviously, the last couple of months we've had a lot of energy shifting because of retrograde planets, planets changing directions. And then, right now we have Mercury and Mars going stationing, which means that they're slowing down to prepare to go direct again, to move direction again.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever planets change directions, that means that there is some internal shift, right? That we need to look at, something that we need to work out internally with ourselves. And so I would say Mars went retrograde September 9th, right? So since September 9th, we've had to really take a look at ourselves in terms of like who we are, how we want to show up in the world, our masculine approach to the world, our active approach to the world, our physical well-being, how we relate to assertion and anger in the world, and our own independence in the world. So a lot of that had to be processed through, sometimes with the Mars energy, of course, the men seem to be a little bit more impacted by that retrograde because they identify with the Mars energy a little bit more than women in general. But of course, women are also impacted because there's plenty of women out there in the Western world, especially, who are very active and who identify with the masculine energies too. But there's definitely a needing to do a lot of inner processing, right? And that's what's been going on over the last couple of months. This inner processing has been so strong. And because in the Western world, we're not used to doing a lot of inner processing, we're used to more connecting to the outside world, listening to what's going on out externally out there, and how do we adapt, how do we connect, how do we make things work, right? We're more used to that than we're used to really tuning in and doing the internal stuff. So that makes it sometimes a little bit challenging for people because they get frustrated, or they feel like they're stuck, or they feel like they're hung up, because they're not really going within what they're meant to be doing. They're still focusing on, the media and the this and the that and all the people out there. What is everybody else doing, right? And that, of course, then can create some anxiety. It can create, this feeling of depression. Sometimes it can create, sort of like a, feeling ungrounded, right? But if we know that we're in a state where we have to kind of tune in with ourselves and we have to connect to ourselves internally, that makes it a little bit easier, because then we're not so eager to try to move forward in the outside world. then we're more focused on how do I move forward within myself, right? Like within what I need, what I want, what works for me, right? So it's just a different way of looking at how to use the energies, right? In a sense. And so now that we're getting closer to these planets going direct, we're becoming a little bit more nervous because there's a heightened feeling in the air, right? And this is not just because there's an election coming in the US, right? That there is a heightened feeling in other countries as well, right? So it's not just in the US. We're feeling this Mercury station, this exalted, internal dialogue. It's like, there's so much going on in our mind, right? Then there's this exalted Mars energy, which wants to move things forward, which wants to finally move on, right? And wants to finish this inner processing and wants to go and bring all this stuff out into the world. Like, how can I go to that next place? And so we're all a little bit on edge because of that, right? The energy feels very much like there's this edginess to it, right? Because Mars is exalted, Mercury is exalted. And then, of course, we have a full moon coming tomorrow, right? And the full moon energy, even though it's not exact yet, there's a sensing the moon is almost full, right? I mean, you can still feel that fullness of that, even though it's not exact yet. But what that will bring for us is, of course, a full moon always creates a bigger awareness of where we're at. How do we relate to each other? How do we connect with each other? How do we interact with each other, right? And the full moon is going to it's almost like a flashlight. Right? You have to think of the moon as like that flashlight that comes from the sky and just kind of like brings, this awareness of what's been unconscious. What does the feeling body tell us? Because the moon has to do with our feelings, right? So, and that's why very often during a full moon, people go a little bit crazy because the feelings bubble up. There's like a much more heightened sense of feelings that comes up during a full moon. So if you think about, we have an exalted mental capacity right now. We have an exalted physical energy and masculine energy that drives us right now. And then we have the full moon coming up, which is going to create all this emotion that comes up. So you can see that, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to really feel either extremely overwhelmed with all of that, or we're going to feel really frantic, or we're going to feel really anxious. Everybody will deal with this a little bit differently, right? Mm-hmm. If you have a lot of tools, if you have a lot of support in your life, use it, because you're going to need that support. You're going to need to feel this stabilizing factor, right? Like interact with other people or connect with other people that can give you that can give you this sense of groundedness, that it can give you that sense of stability and telling you like it's going to be okay. Or give it to yourself, like do some conscious breathing exercises where you can really tell your own physical body that you are okay right now. Because what happens very often, what the reason why we get so anxious, physically speaking, or why the body starts to act up, is because we tend to go either into the future or into the past, right? We look at the past and we look at all the things that we don't like. And then we look at the future and then we kind of project into the future all the things that we don't want to have happen. And so we create a lot of fear and anxiety when we do that. So what we really have to remember with the way the energies are right now is like the biggest enemy out there right now for every one of us is fear. There is no other enemy. There is nobody else out there who is doing anything to you. The only thing that is doing that to you is fear. And you have control over that because you can manage your fear. There are ways to do that. And the best way to do it is to just stay present and focus on your breath and keep telling your body through your breath that you are okay. Because ultimately, we are, each one of us is okay, no matter what you're experiencing. Mm-hmm. In the present moment, you're always okay. It's just when you jump into the past or the future that you might not be. Right? So we have to manage how we work with these energies. And Uranus is a big part of this full moon chart. Uranus is conjunct the moon at the time of the full moon. So what we're feeling there is Uranus can be this restlessness, right? And it can make us feel a little bit on edge as well. But Uranus ultimately is also about progress. And Uranus is about the world of ideas, the world of invention, the world of doing things differently, right? Making a difference. So what we want to focus on with this full moon is like, how can we make a difference? How can we reinvent the wheel? How can we kind of like connect to the larger sense of what needs progress in our lives? We can do that on an individual level, and we can do that on a collective level, right? Yeah. And if we can focus on that, it doesn't matter who gets elected next week in the US, right? It doesn't matter, what's going on out there in the world, what the media is telling you about COVID-19. Because if you focus on where you can actually make a difference, that is going to give you a tremendous amount of peace. And it's going to make you feel really good about where you're at and what you're doing.
I want to get into that a little bit more and talk about the moon and the sequence that we have next weekend, which is not happened since 1944. I'm going to bring up a news article. But as you were saying, for the last couple of months, where we were asked basically to go within and the energies were conducive to that, how much more of that time window is available to us left to do that internal process work before the energies change again? What are the dates you're looking at?
Yes. So Mercury will go direct on November 3rd, which is on election day. We'll talk about that in connection with the election as well. Okay. And then Mars will go direct on November 13th. So within that 2 week, really within the 2 weeks of that full moon, right? These planets will start to go direct. So we will still feel some of that tension, of them not yet quite being, either being direct or not yet being fully moving fast enough.
All right.
So we can feel that for sure. But we need to remember that there are things that we can do. And rather than focusing always on what's not possible or where the problems are or where the setbacks are, we need to focus on what is it that I can do, even if it's little things, even if it's small steps, right? And this is so important. We have to retrain ourselves. We have to retrain our mind, because the mind is so easily goes into the negative. It so easily goes into fixing mode, right? Or into, this is a problem, this is effed up, whatever it might be, right? So we need to learn to retrain the mind and get to this place of like, let me focus on what I have control over, and let me focus on what I actually can do right now. What do I have influence over, right? And I know we've talked about this before in previous interviews, but I think it's so important to repeat that, because it makes a huge difference, When you can do that with yourself, your life gets incrementally better by the minute.
Especially right? Now with all the bombardment of mainstream media and the fear factor going on. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay, so we have a little bit of time to go within to do that work. Is there basically based on the planetary alignments. And now we're talking collectively, so we're not talking individually for people. And maybe for people who want more precision there, you can book a reading with Sonja. But is there anything specific that the planets are asking us to look at? Is it a relationship thing? Is it an internal understanding of things? What really are we working on here for the next couple of weeks?
It's a great question. Yes. So with the Mars retrograde, it's all about what can I do as an individual, as an independent physical body in this lifetime or on this planet? What do I want to do, and what can I do? Right. So there's the focus on that. With Mercury, it's actually more on relationships and how do we share our resources with other people. Right? Like, how do we connect? How do we talk to each other? How do we listen to each other? Is there a listening to each other that's actually taking place? Or are we just spurring out our anger and our frustration at other people? Right? Because the key, of course, right now, also with the North Node being in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, is we want to make an effort in learning how to listen and how to communicate effectively. And effectively means that the other person can hear you. It doesn't mean that you just go blah and the other person goes blah back, right? It means that there's actually sort of like a two-way street, right? Yeah. But right now, when you look at social media or when you look at the TV, at just the news channel, right? It looks as though people are just not really listening to each other.
Yeah. There's a lot of screaming going on. If you saw the first debate, you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay. So Sonja, I just wanted to, I have in a ticker tape here, your direct link to your website. I still had here the coupon code Beyond Mystic. Is that still valid? Okay, good.
That's still valid.
Okay, yeah, good, very good. And
that's
folks,
still valid until December.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
And folks, if you want to visit AstrologerCoach.com, Sonja and your team here have made quite a few improvements to the website. It's much cleaner, faster, and there's a couple of new ways to book your online courses and services there. We'll get back to that at the end of the show, but I just wanted to show you that. I think it's really cool. Thank you so much, Sonja, for upgrading that. It's beautiful. This is the news article I wanted to get into. I've been speaking to a few psychics in the last couple of weeks, and they've all felt this connection or bridge, energetically speaking, with the end of World War II. So all these energies of basically Hail Mary passes, it's going for broke, it's, we're at the 11th hour here. I'm talking about World War II. It very much feels like that now. You mentioned COVID, this world pandemic, people are in lockdowns or in quarantine, they have curfews. So worldwide, we're kind of living that same fear and that same anxiety on a world stage here. And I wanted to bring that up because here in this article, they're talking about the full moon shining on Halloween, the first time again since 1944. So there seems to be energetically a connection there. And Sarah and I were talking about this, I think last week, and we were like, it feels very much like we're walking in this minefield, and especially people who are in the alternative media, as you've seen in the last couple of weeks, a lot of people got purged by YouTube, a lot of people got purged on Patreon, and these are people who have alternative voices to either the pandemic or the election, or the Q phenomenon and all this stuff. So to me, it feels again like we're burning books, we're censoring people, and for me, it's literally like walking in the minefield because I'm like, well, I'm walking on eggshells. What can I say? What can I not say? My friend just got blown up last week. This week is this guy, and maybe I'm next. So what do you make of this? What do you make of this energy bridge between the end of the war and today, given the global context that we're in now?
I mean, that's an interesting article. I've actually didn't know that this was the first full moon on Halloween since 1944. I mean, I would say this, that of course Halloween is a celebration, right? It's it's a end of the month in October celebration, and November 1st is usually like, that's like a sort of like a pagan festival in terms of like shifting into a new phase of our seasons, right? Where we're letting go of things, and we're planting seeds maybe for the spring already, right? Because we're going into the winter months now. And I mean, Halloween was supposed to be, I think, a celebration of of death, you know, of the dead, you could say. And I mean, that's how it started out. Obviously, now the way we celebrate Halloween, it's become more of an expression of ourselves and expressing who we are as individuals, rather than a celebration of the dead. But that's kind of in the pagan tradition, you know. This time of the year was connecting with our ancestors, you know, connecting to the people that have come before us, connecting to, you know, the wisdom that was given to us or handed down to us from our ancestors, and kind of honoring the dead, you know, honoring these ancestors, honoring their wisdom, you know, that is in our bloodline, you know. And I mean, obviously Halloween now has a little bit of a different meaning, but I think, you know, Scorpio, which is always the sun is always in Scorpio during the time of Halloween, right? The sun in Scorpio is about death and dying. You know, it is about, what do we let die that is no longer worthy to be alive, right? We need to let something die in order for something new to spring out and for something new to be born, because Scorpio is about death and rebirth in a sense, right? Because an ending is always a new beginning as well, right? So Scorpio understands that when we let go, that there is something new that comes from that there's never a stagnation, right? But when we don't let go, then there is a stagnation, right? So because you cannot bring something new in without letting go of the old, right? So part of that is that the Scorpio lesson, in a sense, you know, for people who are Scorpios or who have planets in Scorpio, there's always this lesson of, you have to let go in order for something new to come in. And, you know, if we think about, you know, the full moon, of course, being sort of like an emotional time, and being something that's connected maybe to a new beginning of some sort, where we need to create more stability in our lives, right? Because we're talking about the moon in Taurus, and Taurus has to do with stability. It has to do with physical stability, you know, feeling safe in our physical bodies, feeling safe in our physical environment, you know, having financial security, you know, that's connected to Taurus. So the full moon will bring our awareness to that, you know, to say, well, if we have a new beginning, we need to focus on these stabilities, you know, these financial stabilities, these physical stabilities, what we value, you know, and maybe also let go of some old values, you know, some things that are no longer valuable to us because they're not where we're at anymore, you know, as people, whether that's collectively speaking or individually speaking, right?
You're blowing my mind because you're using a bunch of keywords, and I was taking notes here while you were talking. So that whole concept of having to let go, or something dying for something to rebirth. Okay. Yeah. In World War II, or just after World War II, the planet came together to install this Bretton Woods agreement, which is the financial system that we've lived under since World War II. Of course, it was tweaked a little bit in 1971 when we got off the gold standard, but still we were in that, generally speaking, pattern of financial sovereignty maps, if you wish, around the planet. And now, of course, last week, the IMF just announced that Bretton Woods is now dead, and we're looking for a new financial system, a global financial system. So again, on the eve here of Halloween, with this full moon, again, that hasn't happened since World War II, there's a connection there with us as well, with the financial system.
Yes, and I'm actually wondering if maybe Uranus was in Taurus at that time as well. I don't know. Let me just look at 1944 real quick here, because
That'll be interesting. Yeah, and folks, while Sonja looks that up, if you have questions for us, please do start populating the chat. Please write your first name and your question in high caps, so it's easier for Sonja and I to pull up on the screen and to read them when we get to the Q&A section of the show. Yeah, so that's very fascinating, Sonja, this whole death and rebirth of the financial system. And of course, there's many people in channels such as myself who've been talking about that for years, but now we have, you can hear it from the horse's mouth. The IMF is telling you this whole planetary financial system is about to change. It's actually in the process of changing right now, if you're paying attention. PayPal just announced last week also that starting in 2021, they will be accepting these new cryptocurrencies for payments. So that, again, this is the big players telling you that the system is changing beneath your feet here.
Yeah, and I was just thinking this morning, actually, I was like, if people want to pay me in cryptocurrency for my readings, I would totally be okay with that. I would accept that, because I think that this is going to be part of how people will interact in the future in terms of like paying each other, It
used to be that you would put your cryptocurrency addresses on your website, and there was an application called Woo Commerce also that accepted or converted cryptocurrencies for payments on your websites. But now, if PayPal is going to accept it, it'll be up to the end user to decide how they pay you, and you can decide at the end of the month how you transfer money from your PayPal account to you. So that will make it a lot easier starting in 2021. And this is going to be en masse across the planet. So you can imagine we're probably going to have an announcement from Amazon, from Apple Pay coming up soon, because they're not going to be left behind here. So they've all been doing this and building out the infrastructure for years. So that's very fascinating.
Absolutely.
Were you able to verify for 1944?
So Uranus was not in Taurus at the time. It was in Gemini already. Because Uranus was in Taurus. I know it was during the war, but it was before the end of the war.
Okay. Very fascinating. So, going back to this moon here, the question of the rebirth, especially for those individuals who maybe have spent the last energy or the time in the last energy to go within, to work on the Mars energy, what I can do personally, and also in terms of relationships, what can they expect, or how can they use maybe the energy of the full moon to kind of catapult them, or to maybe go that last mile, if you wish, before these big changes happen? Because there was a question in the chat here about December 21st, 2020. A lot of other natives, shamans, and astrologers are talking about that date having significance. So we'll get to that after the election. But just now, as we finish, round out this full moon, how can we use this energy to maybe maximize some of our potential here?
Well, one thing I would say is, because the planets are not direct yet, because Mercury and Mars is still stationing and still retrograde at the time of the full moon, I would advise for people to pay attention to what is in their awareness. Like, what are they most scared about? What do they feel most frustrated about? Where do they feel like they're not being heard, or they're not able to connect necessarily with others? Pay attention, because a stationing planet always invites us to focus on what's in our face, so that when the planet goes direct, that we can use that awareness that we've created and move forward with something. So I would just say, as best as you can, again, manage your fears and stay grounded and stay connected to yourself and to others in a way that is supportive to you. Like, connect with people that have the same values as you. Don't try to fight other people that don't have your values. There's no point in that, because they're not going to listen to you anyways, and they're not going to change what they value just because you tell them to. So just stay with your own center and connect with people who support that, to support you in your center, because that is so valuable. It's valuable to be in our center right now. There's a lot going on out there. There's a lot of shifting, a lot of changing. There's a lot more changes coming. You know, if we don't know how to be in our center, we're going to be like the feather blowing in the wind, you know, just going like woo, 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 woo. And we're not going to be able to figure out what the hell is going on. We're going to be totally overwhelmed.
Right. And
so be a tree rather than a feather.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I love that. And for a lot of the audience here at Beyond Mystic, I mean, there's so many, call them wanderers, call them star seeds, call them way showers. So they need to hear this too, because they've been ahead of the curve for so long and people thought they were crazy, and now all of these changes are happening, you know, and so it's kind of hard for the audience here too to stay centered. But again, your friends and family are going to need you more than ever now moving forward, because all of these changes are coming to a head. And so being flexible and just being there and being centered in that energy without having to convince anyone, you know, you're going to be of great value.
The convincing is not necessary, because the changes are going to come anyways, and people who can't be on board with the changes, they will just check out.
Yeah.
You know, they will either check out mentally or physically, you know, but they won't be able to stick around.
Yeah.
So you don't have to convince anyone.
What do you think, in terms of the full moon, if we get into a void of course, or if we get into, I'm trying to figure out here, I don't know if it's connected with the tides, or how is it connected to censorship? There's something bugging me here about, again, the end of World War II, trying to censor a certain part of the population, burning books. We're seeing that now too. Do you see a connection there, either with the moon or maybe with another planetary body that's bringing us in that same weird energy?
Well, I would say that's more connected to the moon nodes, because the moon nodes are in Sagittarius, Gemini right now. And Sagittarius has to do with our belief systems, and Gemini has to do with the spoken word. So with the South Node in Sagittarius, there's going to be sort of like a needing to let go of belief systems that no longer serve us on a collective level, and individually speaking too. And with the North Node in Gemini, we're being invited to, again, listen to each other, you know, rather than to just, you know, completely ignore what everybody's saying that you don't agree with. You know, just because you don't agree with someone doesn't mean you shouldn't listen, you know. And also, don't just listen to what they're saying, listen to what's underneath that. Because when someone is speaking their truth, or someone's speaking their fears or their passions or whatever it is that they're expressing, there's something that they're trying to communicate. So what is that? What are they trying to communicate? You know, my favorite example, I don't know if I mentioned this on this show already, but my favorite example is this guy who went into the Ku Klux Klan, and it's an African-American guy who said he was a journalist and he was writing a book about the Ku Klux Klan. And he showed up and he called first, obviously. He called first and he said, I'm, you know, writing a book and I'm interviewing people to understand what this is about and why people are a part of this organization. And he got an interview with one of the top guys from this organization. And he sat down with him and he just listened. He just listened. And clearly he was African-American, right? So he could have thought, my life is a danger here. You know, this guy could just come out and shoot me, you know, as I'm sitting here. But because he was interested and because he was listening and he was genuinely like interested and curious to hear this person's point of view, that guy did not feel threatened. So he just told him why he's doing this, what's this about. And so he just kept talking to him. He just kept, that's very interesting and blah, blah, blah. You know, at the end of his interviews that he had with several people in that group, they all decided they didn't want to be a part of this group anymore. They gave back their robes because they realized that it wasn't what they were believing or what they were doing wasn't really truthful. Because clearly they were talking to this guy here who was supposed to be their enemy.
Right.
And here this guy is listening to them, coming with an open heart. You know what I mean? So I think this is a really beautiful example of like how important it is to truly listen to the people that you don't agree with. And to just be curious, why are they saying this? Why are they having this opinion? Rather than being scared of them. Because what we are ultimately, the reason why we don't listen is because we're scared of them. We're scared of what their opinion can do to us. How it can impact our lives.
Yeah, our reality,
our reality. Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, it comes down to fear. So just remember, fear is your biggest enemy. It's not anybody out there.
Very good. Let's move into the election. I know a lot of the audience here is probably, excited, fearful,
yes,
and full of wonder as to what's going to happen next week.
Yes.
What are the gods saying, or what are the planetary energies saying about this?
Well, I would say, obviously it's difficult to make predictions like that, right? But energetically speaking, I would say we probably won't know the outcome for quite a long time, because Mercury is stationing to go direct that day, the day of the election. So it will take quite a long time before we have the results and before we have the actual winner, so to speak. And who knows, the winner might not even be the winner, So what might happen is that, by the way, the last time Mercury was stationing to go direct on the day of the election was in 2000, November 2000, which was the election between Bush and Gore.
And it took months to figure out the results because of the hanging Chad fiasco. Yeah. Right.
Exactly. So there will be something. It might not look exactly the same how it did in 2000, but there will be something. And I mean, look, we all can agree that President Trump is not going to give up his presidency very easily, right? So even if he doesn't win, so to speak, he's not going to admit that he didn't win until somebody else decides who won. So I think we're going to go through a lot of back and forth, because Mars will be exalted at the time. There's going to be a lot of anger. There's going to be a lot of frustration. People are going to pound their chests. They're going to go like, I think it's going to be uncomfortable for a while. Honestly, I do think it will be uncomfortable.
Do you see more energies promoting or exacerbating some of the riots that we're currently seeing right now? Is that going to be even worse, maybe next week or the week after that? What are the energies saying about that? Yeah.
Very possible, yes. I mean, with Mars being exalted, Mars is our planet of anger. It's connected to our frustrations, to our what we desire, what we want, what we're passionate about. And if these desires and wants are not being met, and if we feel that these are threatened by something, we're going to get very angry. We're going to stand up and go, hey, enough. We don't want that. Yeah. So yes, it's very possible that there's going to be riots. It's very possible that there's going to be, some kind of violent outbreaks of some sort, and I'm not saying it's going to happen everywhere, but, there could be incidences, there could be somebody, just going completely nuts and going like, whoa, I mean, there is crazy people out there.
In France, what's that all about? Like,
what's happening in France?
With the decapitation, like it's the second one, I think, in 2 weeks. It's kind of like reminiscent of that Charlie Hebdo event a couple of years ago. We don't need to talk about that, but again, just the energy is so it's right. Weird right now, and I agree.
Well, that's that exalted Mars, right? The exalted Mars, and people just being on edge in general, because of these moon nodes, and Neptune is squaring the moon nodes, so people feel very hopeless right now. People feel on edge and hopeless, and that's never a good combination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's why it's so important to have a practice where you can stay grounded and when you can go within and just feel safe within your own physical being, within your own mental being, within your own emotional being. We got to find ways to come back to ourselves right now. I mean, of course, that's always a good idea, but especially in times of agitation and crisis and when there's a lot of anxiety out there, you know, there's so much fear in the world right now. I mean, there's more fear right now than there has been in years.
Yeah.
I mean, 2020 has been a rush of, you know, people being scared. I mean, I see people that I've interacted with, you know, in 2019, in 2018, that now I interact with, and I cannot believe the level of fear that they're experiencing that they have never experienced before.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I can only say fear is the enemy. It's nothing else. If you manage your fear, you're going to be okay.
In Kung Fu, my teacher says fear is facts. Wait, appearing real? No.
Facts appearing. No.
What's the
appearing to be real?
No, there's missing one.
I know. I heard that expression before too. I can't think of it right now.
Or facts or evidence.
False evidence.
Evidence appearing real.
Appearing real. F-E-A-R.
False evidence. Sorry, John just corrected us in the chat.
And that's the thing, right? It's not so much. I mean, I'm not even sure that false evidence is the correct wording, because it's when you think it's real, right? Yeah. So it's imagined evidence, right? Because you're imagining the evidence. It's not always that it's truthful evidence, right? Yeah. You think it's truthful evidence, but it's not always. So it's imagined. It's almost like the imagined evidence of appearing to be real, you know?
Man, I hope this election and the results go smoothly and we get back to some sort of normalcy. We still have this health crisis going on that we need to deal with, and the economy being in the toilet from all of these closures and, you know, start, stop. Man, and on top of that, let's get into this now here. We have about 20 minutes left, and I want to talk about the planets shifting for 2021. Yes. And first viewer's question about maybe December 21st of this year, if there's anything on your radar in terms of these alignments. Maybe we can start there and then move into some of these alignments that are changing for 2021. And folks, while we get into that subject, please do type in your questions if you have any for Sonja, and we'll get to them in order.
I'm just looking at December 21 right now, because I want to make sure that that's the same thing that I'm thinking about it is.
Okay.
Why is it not working?
No. While Sonja is doing that, folks, if you like what we're doing, please hit the like button, please share, and please subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And please do hit the notification bell. Most of my shows are live.
Okay,
and for some reason, YouTube doesn't always send out notifications. So you can also find me on Twitter at Beyond_Mystic, where I post my videos at least 24 hours before the show. Okay, going back to you, Sonja.
Yes, so December 21 is what I thought it was. So on that day, we have a conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn. And that conjunction is important because it starts a new 20-year cycle. Jupiter and Saturn come together every 20 years. They have a conjunction with each other. And the sign that they start this conjunction in is going to be the economic, political, or social expression of our next 20 years. So the last Jupiter-Saturn alignment was in 2000 in Taurus, right? In Taurus. So there was an emphasis in terms of our economy and in terms of our social and political feeling or flavor for things to stay the same, right? Taurus is about wanting things to stay the same. It's about, having more of a materialistic approach towards things, needing things to be, valued in terms of very concrete materialistic ways. It's more about capitalism. It's more about, having material safety, like people want material safety when it's connected to Taurus. So the last 20 years have been more about that. Now, the next 20 years will be about Aquarius. And I know people talk a lot about the Aquarian age a lot of the time, which is not coming until 2065. But this cycle with Saturn, Jupiter in Aquarius is like a taste of that. It's a taste of the Aquarian age, because for the next 20 years, we're going to step into a more visionary place, politically, economically, and socially, where we need to learn, how do we interact with each other? How can we create a vision for humanity that is sustainable for everybody, that includes everybody, that creates more progress. It's going to be more progress oriented. There's going to be a lot of inventions. There's going to be a lot of technology. There's going to be a lot of new things that need to be reinvented, during this time. I think our financial systems are definitely going to shift quite big. We're already seeing a little bit of that, right? But, of course, Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius, is in Taurus right now. So that's one of the reasons why we're already seeing it, is because Uranus in Taurus says, let's change how we value money. Let's change how we connect with money in terms of technology, right? Like how are all of these dots connected, and how can we make it better for everybody, where the people get empowered rather than one particular system, right? Because Aquarius is about the people. It's the people need to be heard and need to be seen and need to be focused on. And when we don't focus on the people, there's going to be a setback, right? The moment we're not going to focus on the people, there's going to be a setback. So we have to focus on humanity, and so that's a 20-year cycle. But also, and I think I mentioned this before in one of your shows, this 20-year cycle is also part of a larger cycle, which is a 200-year cycle, because these conjunctions in Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions, they happen in particular elements for 200 years. And so they've been in the earth element for the last 200 years. And now they are going to be in the air element for the next 200 years. And the air element is more connected to thought. It's more connected to ideas. It's connected to our vision for the future. It's connected to our interactions with other people. So air is a much lighter element than earth. Earth, of course, is about, what's real, the material things. It's about what works, what doesn't work. How can we get the structure? How can we get grounded in certain structures and certain rules and certain ways of doing things, right? That's more the earth element. And so, of course, earth is a little bit heavier, right? So we're moving out of this earth element into an air element for the next 200 years. And that's going to change everything. I mean, that's going to be completely different, right? Yeah. So what we have to remember is that, of course, we still need to be grounded in reality, because we also had a Saturn-Pluto conjunction at the beginning of the year that says that's also a 35-year cycle, right? Right. So we're dealing with different cycles at the same time that are coming in right now. So we still need to stay grounded in reality, but we need to lift our spirit. We need to lift our ability to see vision, to see what's possible out there in the world, to see how we're all interconnected and how we can stay interconnected in a healthy way, right? How can we make that work also on an economic level, for the world, really?
That's fascinating. I love that. It's
so
encouraging.
It's the beginning, though. You have to remember, this is the beginning, right? So the beginning point doesn't mean that it's going to shift immediately, right? We're going to feel the shift immediately, but it doesn't mean that everything's going to shift, right off the bat, because, this conjunction is happening. It's the beginning of a 20-year cycle. Right. So we have to remember that this is, we're in this for the long haul. We're in this for the next 20 years. And I would say that the first year of this cycle will have some challenges, 2021, because Uranus is squaring the Jupiter-Saturn movement through Aquarius. So we will have challenges, but we will also have a forward movement. It will be sort of like let's do it. Let's go. So it will feel stressful in some ways, and maybe there will be people who will definitely feel that as anxiety as well. But ultimately, it will be a shift that we all need right now. It has to happen in that way.
That's very good. Again, very encouraging. It's a beginning. Let me bring up the first question here. Daniel McTeed. When planets go direct, will there be less polarizing energies?
I wish I could say yes to that, but
don't we all?
Don't we all? No, I don't think so.
Okay.
And here's the reason why. Because when the planets go direct, there's still going to be this sense of like frustration that needs to be worked out, in the outside world. Right now, we feel it strongly internally, but once the planets go direct, we need to connect this internal frustration with the outside world. So no, I don't think there's going to be peace at hand once the planets goes direct. No.
Okay.
But, I think that as we're moving closer to the end of the year with Jupiter moving into Aquarius, we will start to be able to be a little bit more calm about what's happening. It will be a little bit less emotional, right? I think that as we're moving through November, there's going to be a lot more emotion that we're going to be experiencing. Once we move into December, especially late December, we will have the ability to see things a little bit more from a distance. We have to be able to see things more from a bigger picture point of view and be less emotionalized about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. There's another question on the screen. I'll bring this one up first, and I'm trying to bring up another video because you just made me think of an important topic to bring up. So let me bring this next one here. The way it's phrased, so let me see here. Question, will there be arrests of the higher-ups or the cabal anytime soon? So maybe we can talk about that in terms of planetary alignments. Are we getting closer to more justice? Are we having any types of planetary bodies that are maybe conducive to change in governance or in their justice systems? What do you see there?
Yes, I mean, my sense is that with this new cycle, with this Jupiter-Saturn cycle in Aquarius, and then also with Pluto moving into Aquarius in 2024, I think a lot will have to change with government and with political systems. Absolutely. Because let's face it, if you look at the political system, especially in the US, I mean, obviously in other countries, there are other versions of that. But in the US in particular, it's not working. The people are not being heard. And this is so evident because people are so angry. People are only angry when they're not being heard. Right. So we need to find a way to create a political system that lets people be heard. Otherwise, there's going to be a crisis and there's going to be war. People are not going to stand for that.
Right.
So I think the shift has to happen because the focus of the planets will move more onto the people, right? Because Aquarius is about the people.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that there will be, I mean, I don't know, I said yesterday to a client of mine, I said, I think this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is the beginning of the end of the 1%ers. And
that's
again, it's the beginning of the end of the 1%ers.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a process, but I do think that we ultimately, we're moving in a direction where there needs to be a system in place that, and I think technology will be a big tool in that. you know, like how we're using our phones, how we're using our technology,
Right.
how we're using apps. You know, I think politics will move very drastically towards more of utilizing some of that stuff so that more people can be heard.
Very good. Gemma, easy. Sorry, my dog's just, I think she's hearing something outside. Gemma, easy. Okay. Let me bring up this video I wanted to show you. This was posted a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's Archbishop Vigano, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, he's calling out the New World Order. He's calling out Pope Francis. He's calling out the guys like Gemma. Sorry. He's calling out Bill Gates. So there appears to be a movement here or a big change coming up in the papacy, and basically what he's explaining is that since the death of Pope Jean-Paul II, we've now been living under what he calls an anti-church, and that it's been controlled by quote unquote the children of darkness. And what he's trying to do, and others inside the church now, is to reestablish to their original mission, and he basically says they've been invaded by the Jesuits and the Freemasons. So I mean, these are extraordinary, explosive words to be hearing from an archbishop here. So again, here in terms of the energies, the planetary alignments, is there anything to suggest that we might be living a huge transition or belief structures around our religions on the planet?
Well, yes, because the South Node is in Sagittarius right now, which has to do with our belief systems and the needing to let go of beliefs that are no longer serving us as a collective and as an individual. So, and Jupiter, of course, which rules Sagittarius, is conjunct Pluto and Saturn right now. So because it's conjunct Pluto and Saturn, there is a need to really, you know, dig out all the stuff that needs to be, you know, things that we have to look at, right? Because it's in Capricorn. We have to look at the reality of all of that. We have to look at our the leadership or the authority figures in the world and look to see what are they doing that is supporting us or supporting a social a social structure or social community, and what is it that they're doing that is not supporting us, you know? And it needs to be called out. I mean, yeah, it needs to be said, it needs to be called out, and on all levels, you know. I mean, that's not just in this country, in all countries, on all levels. And yeah, I mean, religion, of course, is connected to our belief structures, right? So what we believe about life very often for a lot of people has to do with what they believe in terms of their own religion. And then people who don't have a religion, who are non-religious, you know, just atheist, I guess you would say, right? They have beliefs too. I mean, atheists have belief too, right? Even if they don't belong to a particular religion, they believe in something, right? They believe in, I don't know, money or currency, or, you know, they believe in themselves, you know, or they believe in, you know, what they can touch, what they can see, right? I mean, everybody has some kind of belief system or some belief structure, and we have to examine, right now, we have to examine those belief systems and those belief structures. And some of us might have a rude awakening around it, you know, where it's like, whoa, I used to believe this, and now it's like, what happened? You know?
Well, yeah, like what? You know, the anti-church, for people who go to church, like what just happened here? So these are big words, and it's interesting because a lot of what this gentleman, this archbishop, was talking about coincides with some of the prophecies from Nostradamus in French, Nostradamus.
Yeah.
And Yeah, there's alignments of specific astral bodies the last couple of years, and one coming up, I think, next March as well. I'll send you a decode from this episode
Thank
from
you.
another gentleman, and maybe we can do a subsequent show just on this here, because again, it has to do with astrology, and it's all timing into what Nostradamus was talking about. And for this gentleman here to come out just now talking about these things, there's more to that, and I know we're running out of time, but I'll send you the link, and maybe we could do a follow-up show on that. Okay.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Very good. Folks, we're running out of time here for questions. Thank you so much for joining us. What I'd like to do now is ask Sonja to talk about some of her services on her website now, and maybe talk about the ones that are more pertinent to the energies that we are going through now. So if you guys want to book a session, you'll know maybe what to choose from here.
Yeah, if you could pull up my webinar page, that would be great. If you go to services on my website, and then click on the webinar page there. One of the things that people can do if they're interested in some of the things that I talk about is look at, some of the webinars that I offer around, Mars, the Mars retrograde, for example, and what that means. That's on sale right now. Then the Mercury retrograde is on sale right now as well. So there's a bunch of webinars that are on sale right now that are still pretty interesting to watch right now. And then there are other webinars that are interesting to watch just, for the next, several years. So feel free to take a look at that on my website. If you're interested in getting daily and weekly support from me so that you can align yourself with the energies in a way that feels good to you, I suggest becoming a member on my website. You can be, there's 2 membership levels, and one of them is just a basic membership where you get daily forecasts and weekly forecasts just to see what's going on every day out there, right? And what are the energies doing? And then there's the star membership that includes a lot of discounts, but also a monthly forecasting forum, where in the monthly forecasting forum, I talk about what's coming up in the month ahead. So each month we look at our own birth charts in relationship to what the energies will be, which of course is really great to do if you are an astrology student, or if you're someone who is more interested in astrology besides just hearing about it superficially. If you want to really look at your own chart as well with what's going on, then the monthly forecasting forum is a really wonderful thing to do every month.
And what about personal readings right now too, with the energies that go within? Is there anything specific you would want to recommend to folks here?
I mean, it depends on what your resources are that you have currently available, right? Because I know some people are going through some tough times. So I always recommend, do what you can. If you don't have a lot of resources right now, if you scroll back up to the very top, there's a reading for $98. That's a soul purpose reading. Start there, because any kind of reading that you can do right now is going to be valuable, because it will support where you're at and where you're going.
Right.
If you can do a little bit more, if you can do a starter package, for example, that is great, because that's a whole life reading, which is a much longer reading, which we can go into a lot of detail about your chart and what's coming up next for you and what you're currently experiencing. Plus, it also includes 2 coaching sessions with me. So I can support you not just via astrology, but I can also support you on an emotional level, because a lot of people are experiencing tremendous emotional difficulties right now, anxieties, fears, feeling disconnected, feeling depressed. And that is something, if you can afford that, please reach out for support, because that is ultimately what will help you over the hump and get to that next place in your life where you can feel more empowered and feel stronger in the world, and make a difference, not just for yourself, but also for other people.
And so for those who are inclined to maybe learn more about astrology, how do these courses work here?
So if you want to take astrology courses, I would say definitely start out with, the intro to see if that's even a good fit for you, if this seems like something you want to do even or not. You can watch the How to Read Your Birth Chart for free right now. So that I would start there too. So you get a sense for how I teach and what these courses look like. They're going to be online courses to get a feel for if this is even something that you would want to engage with. And then the first course to start with, I would recommend for everybody, no matter what your astrology level is, I would still start with the basics course, the Soul-Based Astrology Basics course, because that course will tell you, it will give you a sense for how everything works in the chart, every planet, every house, every aspect, how the moon nodes work, how your own birth chart fits together, how everything fits together, and how to look at that from a soul's perspective. Because astrology, is a tool, and as such, it can be used in a lot of different ways, depending on the person's consciousness that uses the tool. So I always like to compare it with, like a tool that you have in your toolbox, like a screwdriver or a hammer or, whatever you use at in your house to fix things, right? If you are a person who's careful and who uses their own tools conscientiously and makes sure that nobody gets hurt while you're using that tool, then it's going to be useful. And you're going to be able to make all kinds of adjustments in your own home with that tool, right? Yeah. But if you're not conscientious, if you're not able to be safe with the tool that you're using, and supporting yourself and everybody else around you with that, you could also cause harm with that tool, right? So if we have a hammer and we're just swinging it around and we go like that, we can cause harm. It could just fall out of our hands. If you give a 2-year-old a hammer, they might cause some damage in your living room, right? Yeah. But a person that knows how to use a hammer and uses it consciously and with caution, you can, hang up a beautiful painting. So it helps. And it helps, right? So astrology is a tool, and we have to remember that whoever uses astrology needs to use it in a conscious way, in a way that empowers other people, in a way that empowers yourself too. If you look at your own chart and you don't feel empowered after you read something online or after you've looked at some astrology book, then that's clearly not going to be serving you very much. Yeah. You want to feel empowered, right?
Very good. Well, before I let you go, Sonja, any last words of advice or encouragement for dealing with the energies that are coming up here? What are your thoughts on that? What can we leave the audience with today on a positive note?
I mean, besides everything I've already said, I don't want to repeat myself. I would say that, the mind is a fickle thing. So, watch out for that, calm your mind, be silent with your mind sometimes. Try to be silent with your mind, try to observe it, try to be kind and compassionate with your mind. I mean, the things that we tell ourselves, the things that we tell the world sometimes, the mind sometimes comes up with things that don't last, that are just there in the moment, and then they're gone again. So whatever your mind is telling you right now, honor it and love it, but don't take it as the forever truth. Mm-hmm. Just know that things change all the time. There's a shift around the corner tomorrow, the next day, nothing's set in stone ever. Yeah. Don't let your mind take you out.
Very good. I forget who made this quote, but
I hope that was positive enough.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. And it's very apropos right now because of all the changes, of course, and because of all the bombardment of energies and people screaming at you in mainstream media. Yes. So for sure, I think the quote was, I forget who it was, it has to do something like this: man is responsible for the thoughts he entertains. So basically you create your own reality. So be careful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Be mindful. Yeah. Be mindful of your thinking. Be mindful of the output.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
very good. Well, thank you. And those are great words of wisdom. Thank you so much, Sonja. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here on YouTube today.
Thank you.
Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And we will see you soon. Merci beaucoup, Sonja. I love you. Have a great day.
Much love.
Au revoir.
Namaste. Bye-bye.